Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and as you can see, we are currently not actually going to be reviewing a book. Quite yet. I've said it before, I don't always English good. So, as of March 2nd, I had 10 subscribers. As of a couple days ago, I actually had 11. So, I want to thank, Theodosius, Friday, Wiggly, Amy Hunt 2000, Annie Cosentino, Steve Aldridge, Janet Brookman, and 5 other people because, as I said, 11, not 10 now. Thank you for pushing me from single digits into double digits, a whole 2 digits, of subscribers. So, thank you, and if I ever hit an actually important milestone, I may even do something interesting about it. So, this week's book is The Cat Who Knew a Cardinal, because it is time for the Cat Who book. So, The Cat Who Knew a Cardinal, Qwill is solidly back in Pickaxe. He is now living in his brand new, renovated, upscaled apple barn. He's taken an old apple barn on the Klingen-Schoen lands and has worked and has basically hired Iris Cobb's son. We all remember Iris Cobb, landlady, cook, antiques expert, museum docent, murder victim. She has... her son has decided to start moving on up to Pickaxe, to Moose County. So Qwillerin hired him because he is a builder, architect guy, to refit the old barn. However, this particular book, while it certainly starts with a certain discussion, a certain degree of discussion about that, where this really starts is with Qwillerin contemplating the recent Pickaxe Amateur Theatre Society's production of The Famous History of the Life of King Henry VIII, one of Shakespeare's plays. And the amateur theater group, with various regulars, they decide to drop by Qwillerin's after their last show. And Larry Landspeak from the department store, Fran Brody, the interior designer, Carol Landspeak, Susan Exbridge, who antique dealer and recent divorcee, Derek Cuttlebrink, busboy at the old stone mill. He played 5 minor roles and was outstanding not for his acting, but for his beanpole stature. This is the book that has one of my personally amusing moments, because in this particular book, Derek Cuttlebrink, who plays so many roles, is greeted in the final scene of the final scene that he appears in the play, with the Queen saying that she wishes him to get out of her sight. She never wishes to see this man again, which is unfortunately comedic when you have the same actor playing 5 roles and showing up on stage over and over again. And it winds up getting cut out, which is sort of a point of truth in terms of how stage acting works, that in terms of how Shakespeare works, that people will do things like cutting out a line that could be accidentally funny because you have one actor playing all those roles. Dennis Hough, who was certainly, who, as I said before, had done Qwillerin's Barn, was also in the play as the Duke of Buckingham, and Eddington Smith, the used book dealer who was one of Qwillerin's favorite people in Pickaxe because he sells used books. Hixie Rice, who we remember from back in The Cat Who Saw Red, and who has become a semi-regular since then, and Wally Todd-Whistle, the talented young taxidermist, and of course the director Hilary Van Broek, who is the principal of the high school, who was poached from Lockmaster County's high school, and who is one of the most disliked people in Pickaxe because while he is highly intelligent and highly accomplished and clever and very, very successful in just about anything he put his hands to, is also one of the most sneering, self-centered, smug jerks that you could imagine. He's really one of those people who solidly and definitively acts all the time as though the fact that he is smarter than you means that he is morally and ethically and just generally better than you are. And the Pennsylvania German Schrank, which is one of Qwillerin's pieces of furniture that he hangs on to because it has certain sentimental values to him in association with Iris Cobb, who loved that piece. Upon seeing it, he just has to insist that it's actually an Austrian thing, and look at how it's been stripped down. And it's clearly been misidentified. But the fact is, and so after all of this, a large percentage of the Pickaxe population entertained a loathing for Hilary Van Broek, principal of the high school. At fault was his abrasive personality and unbearable conceit. And he wore black turtlenecks all the time. So there you go. He's one of those people who wears black turtlenecks all the time, clearly as a statement of his artistic personality. But he nonetheless put together a tremendous production that was popular and dramatic and much loved by the people who went to see it. And then after this meeting at Qwill's place, which breaks up at 3 a.m, Qwillerin discovers that Hilary Van Broek has been murdered effectively in his driveway. That is, in Qwillerin's driveway. And not too long after that, Dennis Hough is accused, or rather, is implied to be involved in the murder. And when he commits suicide not long after, of course, rumor springs up that Dennis killed himself out of guilt for killing Hilary Van Broek. We discover along the way that it wasn't that Dennis Hough was feeling guilty, it was that Dennis Hough's wife was taking their daughter and leaving him. And Qwillerin, as he always does in these cases, goes off to try to find out who actually killed Van Broek. And along the way he discovers various things, like that Van Broek was a big fake. He was brilliant and intelligent and clever and entirely self-taught and had absolutely none of the degrees or anything else that he claimed he had. He discovered that Hilary Van Broek had been cheating a whole bunch, had clearly been running some kind of a scam, because he had a whole whack of books in his personal library that he had stuck dollar bills in between the pages. So you can imagine having $10 bills in between the pages of, say, some, 1,000 books, and suddenly you have $10,000, or rather, you have like tens of thousands of dollars if you have $10 bills in between all of the pages of 1,000 books. And along the way, Qwillerin winds up meeting Fiona, and Fiona is the woman who got hired to play Queen Catherine in Henry VIII. Fiona is a woman who was brought in from Lockmaster, from outside Pickaxe, because Hilary Van Broek insisted. And throughout all of this, Qwill is, of course, looking into who killed Van Broek. But throughout all of this, we have something that continues to be a theme throughout the series, and that is Polly Duncan and Qwillerin and their respective jealousies of each other. Polly Duncan, whenever she hears that Qwillerin went out to dinner or lunch or something with another woman, becomes jealous, and Qwillerin, upon seeing Polly Duncan, a picture of Polly Duncan, a photograph of her having a good time with some red-haired man, is immediately suspicious. He really doesn't have much of a leg to stand on when he complains about how jealous she is, because he tends to be extremely possessive of her himself. And this is one of the books in the series that's very much a Pickaxe book. Qwillerin, in the last book, was back in Down Below. In the next book, he goes on vacation somewhere else. Qwillerin is very, very often leaving Pickaxe, being in another place. But some of these books are really in Pickaxe. They're really set there. They're really part of that community. And The Cat Who Knew a Cardinal is one of the really, really in Pickaxe books. So this isn't one of the ones that I own. It is not one of the ones that was one of my great favorites of all time. You can't have favorites of everything at all times. If you do, quite frankly, I feel like it's not just that you have bad taste, it's that you have no taste, good or bad. People should have likes and dislikes. But the thing is, this is one of the books that really, really, really makes that transition clear that Qwillerin has made. The transition that he's made from when he was in the city, when he was in his 40s, when he was working on a big city newspaper. And it's a slower one. It's a kinder Qwillerin. It's a Qwillerin who's much more willing to hold back out of sympathy and empathy for the people who are caught up in and surrounded by and dealing with the murder. And, when it comes up that Fiona and her son Robbie have been all caught up in it because it turns out Hilary Van Broek had left Robbie money, or would have left Robbie money, and that the murder is connected to that. Qwillerin has a sympathy in these later books that he wouldn't have had in the earlier ones. Now, the interesting thing about this series, one of the slightly interesting things is that I think that it's not in this book, but in the next one, that we start to get a couple of shifts that indicate that this series is no longer stuck in lockstep with, temporally with its earliest books. This is a series that I think around this and the next couple of books really fundamentally makes a shift into, this book is set in whatever time it was written in, no matter how inconsistent that may be with the fact that Qwillerin in the earliest books clearly fought in World War II. So what does the title have to do with anything? The title, as with many of these titles, is a little bit oblique. It's connected in that Coco has a thing about staring at a cardinal, as in the bird, the cardinal, out of the window. It has to do with the fact that Van Broek plays a cardinal in the play, and Son of Cardinal is Robbie's horse. But that's about all. Thanks for coming. See you next week.